Your soulmate finally discovered the truth about your childhood. What they learned about you left them in tears. They just can't stop crying. My beloved child, stop scrolling for just a moment, because something has been uncovered that your heart was never prepared to hear spoken aloud. There is a reason you were drawn here now. There is a reason these words found you when they did. Something that remained buried beneath years of silence, strength, smiling, surviving, and pretending everything was fine has finally come into the light. And the person whose heart is tied so deeply to yours has discovered a truth about your childhood that has changed the way they see you forever. They thought they understood your strength. They thought they knew why you sometimes became quiet, why certain memories seemed to pull you inward, why you gave so much love yet sometimes struggled to receive it without hesitation. But what they learned was deeper than anything they imagined. And when the truth settled inside them, they could not hold back their tears. Not because they saw you as weak. Not because they pitied you. They cried because for the first time, they understood how much strength it took for you to become the person standing here today. There are parts of your story you rarely explain. You learned long ago that some memories become too exhausting to translate into words. You learned how to say, "I'm okay," even when something inside you was still carrying an old ache. You learned how to show up for other people while quietly wondering who would ever notice what you carried. And because you became so skilled at surviving with grace, people often assumed your journey had been easier than it truly was. Your soulmate was one of those people. They saw your kindness, your patience, your strange ability to understand pain without being told where it came from. They noticed how you could sense when someone was hurting even before that person admitted it. They noticed your loyalty. They noticed how seriously you took promises. But they never realized those qualities were not born only from softness. Many of them were forged in moments when you had no choice but to become stronger than you should have needed to be. Something happened recently that opened a door into your past. It may have begun through a conversation, an old story, a passing comment, someone who knew you before your soulmate did, or even a detail that seemed completely ordinary at first. Your soulmate was not searching for something dramatic. They were not trying to invade your privacy. They were simply trying to understand you more deeply. But sometimes one small truth unlocks a room filled with 1,000 unanswered questions. And once that door opened, your soulmate began connecting pieces they had never connected before. Suddenly, certain things about you started making sense. Your hesitation before trusting completely. The way you sometimes apologize even when you have done nothing wrong. The way you can become uncomfortable when attention turns completely toward you. The way you sometimes expect disappointment before it arrives. The way you give people another chance even after they have failed you. Your soulmate once thought these were simply parts of your personality. Now they understand that some of them were survival patterns learned by a younger version of you who was trying to keep peace, keep hope, and keep going. When your soulmate first heard what happened, they did not immediately cry. At first, there was silence. A strange, heavy silence. The kind that enters a room when the heart is trying to understand something the mind cannot process quickly enough. They replayed the details. They asked themselves if they had heard correctly. They remembered moments with you that suddenly carried completely different meanings. And then came the realization that broke something open inside them. You had been carrying traces of this story while loving them. You had been showing them tenderness while still having places inside yourself that had once gone without tenderness. You had been encouraging them while remembering what it felt like to need encouragement yourself. You had been forgiving mistakes while knowing how deeply mistakes from others could wound. And that was when their eyes filled. They thought about the younger you. Not the person they know now, but the child you once were. The child who deserved reassurance. The child who deserved protection. The child who may have been confused by things that were too complicated to understand. The child who might have looked strong while secretly hoping someone would notice what was happening behind that strength. And your soulmate could not stop imagining what they would have done if they had known you then. That thought is what made the tears fall harder. They wished they could travel backward through time and sit beside you. They wished they could tell that younger version of you, you are going to make it. You are going to become someone extraordinary. One day someone will understand you. One day someone will see what you carried and love you with even more tenderness because of it. But time does not move backward, and so all of that love they suddenly felt had nowhere to go except into tears. Heaven has watched your journey differently than people have. People saw outcomes. Heaven saw every step required to reach them. People saw the version of you who finally learned how to smile again. Heaven saw the nights when you wondered whether your heart would always feel this heavy. People praised your independence without realizing how early you may have learned not to depend too much on anyone. People called you mature, responsible, calm, understanding, old beyond your years. But heaven saw the hidden cost of becoming those things too soon. This is why the truth reaching your soulmate now carries such emotional weight. They are not only learning what happened. They are learning what it cost you. And something else is happening inside them that you do not yet fully understand. Their tears are not only about your past. Some of those tears are about the present. Because as they learned more, they began remembering the times they misunderstood you. They remembered moments when you withdrew and they assumed you were being distant. They remembered times when you asked for reassurance and they wondered why you needed it. They remembered situations when you reacted strongly to something seemingly small, never realizing that the moment had touched an old wound. They remembered words they said carelessly because they did not know those words were landing on a heart that had already endured more than they understood. And now those memories are returning one by one. This is where regret entered the story. Your soulmate began asking themselves questions they had avoided before. Was I gentle enough with them? Did I listen closely enough? Did I ever make them feel as if they had to earn my love? Did I ever repeat a feeling they had already spent years trying to escape? Those questions became heavier the longer they sat with them. Your soulmate realized that sometimes they interpreted your caution as rejection when it was actually fear. Sometimes they saw your silence as disinterest when it was actually self-protection. Sometimes they thought you were overthinking when you were simply trying to prevent yourself from being blindsided again. The truth changed everything because suddenly your behavior was no longer confusing to them. It was understandable. And that understanding has softened them. Something in their heart is becoming quieter, humbler, more compassionate. The defenses they once carried around this connection are beginning to fall. They cannot look at you the same way because now they see more than your present. They see the road behind you. They see the invisible distance you had to cross to become capable of loving anyone with sincerity. They see that your heart did not remain soft because life always treated it gently. Your heart remained soft despite the moments when it could have become hard. That realization has become one of the most powerful parts of this revelation. There is something your soulmate keeps thinking about, and it is bringing them back to tears whenever it enters their mind. They keep remembering how you cared for them during moments when they were struggling. Maybe you listened when they felt lost. Maybe you showed patience when they were difficult to understand. Maybe you forgave them when they were afraid they had ruined everything. Maybe you supported them during a time when they doubted themselves. Whatever form it took, they now see your love differently. Before, they received it. Now, they understand the miracle behind your ability to give it. Because they are realizing this, you became for other people what you once needed someone to be for you. That truth shook them. Your kindness is not accidental. Your loyalty is not accidental. Your instinct to protect those you love is not accidental. Your ability to notice emotional shifts is not accidental. Much of it was born from noticing rooms carefully, reading expressions, sensing tension, learning when something was wrong before anyone said it, learning when to speak and when to stay quiet, learning how to keep going even when your feelings had nowhere safe to land. And while some of those lessons should never have been yours to learn so young, you transformed them into compassion rather than bitterness. Your soulmate cried because they finally saw the transformation. They saw that you did not become cold. You became caring. You did not become cruel. You became understanding. You did not decide that because you had experienced disappointment, everyone else deserved disappointment too. You became someone who often tries to prevent others from feeling the loneliness you once knew. And that is the part of your story they cannot forget. There is a conversation replaying inside their mind now. Perhaps it is something you once told them that they did not fully understand at the time. Maybe you said, "I don't like feeling like a burden." Maybe you said, "I'm used to handling things myself." Maybe you said, "I just need honesty." Maybe you said, "Please don't disappear without explaining." Maybe you simply said, "I'm fine," with a smile that now feels very different in their memory. Your soulmate is revisiting those words and hearing what was underneath them. They are hearing the child inside the adult. And this does not make them love you less. It makes them want to love you more carefully. Something has shifted in them. They no longer want only your affection. They want your trust. They do not only want your presence. They want you to feel safe in their presence. They do not only want the beautiful moments. They want to understand the moments when you become afraid that beauty will disappear. They do not only want the version of you that laughs, supports, gives, and shines. They want to know how to sit beside the version of you that sometimes feels tired from carrying so much internally. But there is another layer to this, and heaven is revealing it slowly because the truth is still unfolding. Your soulmate did not discover everything at once. There was a second detail. And when they heard that second detail, the tears changed. At first, they were tears of sadness and compassion. But then something else entered their expression. Shock. Regret. Even disbelief. Because the second detail revealed that there was a moment in your childhood when you were carrying something almost entirely alone, and somehow you still found a way to protect someone else from worrying about you. You hid your own fear. You minimized your own pain. You made yourself smaller emotionally so someone else would not have to carry the weight. When your soulmate heard that, they whispered something quietly. They said, they were only a child. Those words broke them. They could not understand why someone so young had to become emotionally strong so quickly. They imagined you facing something with far fewer tools than you have now. They imagined your younger hands, your younger voice, your younger mind trying to make sense of something difficult while still behaving as though everything would be okay. Your soulmate covered their face. The tears came faster. They were no longer simply hearing your history. They were feeling it. And perhaps this explains something about why you sometimes struggle to ask for help even now. Somewhere inside you, asking for help may still feel unfamiliar. You became accustomed to solving, carrying, enduring, adjusting. Even when someone says, "I'm here for you," part of you may still wonder how long they will stay. Part of you may still prepare a backup plan. Part of you may still hold a little emotional suitcase packed with independence because once upon a time, depending completely on others felt uncertain. Your soulmate sees this now. And they are beginning to understand that loving you cannot only mean telling you beautiful words. It must also mean consistency. It must mean being present after the emotional moment ends. It must mean doing what they say they will do. It must mean not punishing you for needing clarity. It must mean recognizing that trust for you may not be built through grand declarations but through small repeated experiences of safety. This realization has become deeply personal for them because they are also confronting their own patterns. The truth about your childhood is forcing them to look at how they love. Are they consistent? Are they clear? Do they communicate when they are overwhelmed, or do they disappear? Do they make you guess what they feel? Do they give reassurance freely, or do they withhold it because they assume you should just know? Your story has become a mirror, and what they see inside that mirror is changing them. There is a reason heaven allows certain truths to emerge only when someone is finally mature enough to understand them. Had your soulmate learned this earlier, perhaps they would have heard the facts but missed the meaning. Now their heart is in a different place. Now they can recognize the weight behind what they discovered. Now they can understand why your love has always felt deeper than casual affection. You do not love lightly because love has meaning to you. When you choose someone, there is a seriousness behind it. When you care with history inside that care. And your soulmate is finally recognizing that your heart has never been ordinary. There is resilience inside it. There is memory inside it. There is fear inside it. There is hope inside it. And somehow, after everything, there is still love. That is why they cannot stop crying. They are realizing they almost misunderstood one of the most beautiful things about you. What they once saw as sensitivity, they now see as emotional depth. What they once saw as caution, they now see as wisdom earned too early. What they once saw as overthinking, they now recognize as a mind trained to scan for what might go wrong. What they once saw as needing reassurance, they now see as a heart trying to learn that love can stay. And now they want to prove something to you. They have not told you yet. They may not even know exactly how to say it. But something has formed inside their heart since discovering the truth. It is more than an apology. More than sympathy. More than sadness. It is a promise. A quiet one. They are thinking, I never want them to feel that alone again. Those words are echoing through them. Yet there is still one problem. Your soulmate is afraid. Not afraid of your past. Afraid of how deeply they now feel responsible for protecting the trust you have given them. They are looking back at every place where they may have been inconsistent. Every moment where pride stopped them from reaching out. Every time they waited for you to make the first move because they were protecting their ego. Every argument where being right became more important than being gentle. Every moment where they assumed there would always be more time. Now your childhood story has made those moments look different. Your soulmate is beginning to understand something people often learn too late. When someone has spent years learning how to survive emotional uncertainty, inconsistency in love does not feel small. Silence does not always feel neutral. Distance does not always feel harmless. Broken promises do not disappear just because the person who made them moved on quickly. Your soulmate is recognizing that loving you well may require them to become more emotionally mature than they have ever been before. And heaven is watching this transformation closely. Because your story was never revealed so they could pity you. It was revealed so they could finally understand what kind of love your heart deserves. You do not need someone who constantly reminds you of your wounds. You need someone who helps create new memories that do not resemble them. You do not need someone who treats your history like a weakness. You need someone who sees how powerful it is that you remained capable of tenderness. You do not need someone to rescue you from the past. You need someone who respects the person you became after walking through it. This is the lesson entering your soulmate's heart now. And while they cry, another emotion is beginning to rise. Admiration. Deep, almost overwhelming admiration. They are thinking about what you have accomplished emotionally without giving yourself enough credit. They are thinking about how many times you probably rebuilt yourself quietly. How many times you entered a new season while still healing from the previous one. How many people received encouragement from you without knowing you had once needed those same words. How many times you chose hope without having proof that hope would be rewarded. Your soulmate is realizing they fell in love with someone who has fought battles they never witnessed. And now, strangely, they feel closer to you than ever. Even if you are not physically beside them. Even if there has been distance. Even if circumstances have complicated the connection. They feel as though they finally met a part of you that had always been hidden behind your eyes. They keep imagining what they would say if you were sitting in front of them right now. They would want to tell you they are sorry for every time they expected you to explain pain you did not yet have words for. They would want to apologize for every moment they treated your caution as a personal rejection. They would want to tell you that they understand now why honesty matters so much to you. Why emotional safety matters. Why consistency matters. Why little changes in someone's tone can affect you more deeply than others realize. But more than anything, they would want to say something you may have needed to hear a long time ago. You should never have had to carry all of that by yourself. And there is another sentence they keep almost saying. But every time they reach it, they begin crying again. Because the sentence is about the future. Your soulmate is no longer only thinking about what happened to you. They are thinking about what they want to become for you. They are wondering whether they can be the person who gives your heart a different experience. The person who shows you that someone can know your difficult history and still choose closeness instead of distance. The person who learns your quiet places without forcing you to explain every one of them. The person who notices when you are overwhelmed and does not immediately make the moment about themselves. Something sacred is being born inside that realization. Not perfection. Commitment. And there is a difference. They know they cannot rewrite your childhood. They know they cannot erase every memory. They know love does not magically undo everything. But they are beginning to believe that love can create contrast. It can show the heart that the past is not the only story available. It can teach someone who learned uncertainty that consistency exists. It can teach someone who learned to stay guarded that vulnerability can sometimes be met with gentleness. It can teach someone who felt unseen that being understood is possible. Your soulmate wants to become part of that contrast. And yet, there is something they still do not know. Something about your childhood has not been revealed to them yet. The person who shared the first truth stopped before telling the entire story. Your soulmate noticed. They asked another question. The room became quiet. Someone looked away. And instantly, your soulmate understood that what they had already heard was only part of it. Their tears slowed. Their breathing changed. They leaned forward, and they asked, "What else happened?" For several seconds, nobody answered. That silence frightened them more than any dramatic response could have. Because silence often means the next truth is heavier. Your soulmate could feel it. There was another piece. Another memory. Another reason you became the person you are. And when the person across from them finally began to speak, they said something your soulmate never expected to hear. Something that made them whisper your name. Something that made every previous revelation feel like only the beginning. And before the full truth could be explained, your soulmate realized that one particular moment from your childhood may be the hidden reason you have always loved the way you do. But what they discovered next did not only make them cry. It made them decide something about you that they have never decided before. The moment that decision formed inside your soulmate's heart, something changed in the room. They were no longer listening to your childhood story as someone standing outside of it. They were emotionally inside it now, imagining the younger version of you, seeing pieces of your present personality forming through moments nobody had ever explained to them. And what they heard next made them lower their eyes because suddenly they understood that the strength they admired in you had a history. Stay with this moment, my child, because the deepest part of what they discovered was not simply what happened to you. It was what you chose to become afterward. That is the part they cannot get out of their mind. That is the part bringing fresh tears every time they think your name. The person sitting across from your soulmate hesitated before continuing. They seemed unsure how much should be shared, because some stories belong so deeply to the heart that speaking them feels almost sacred. Your soulmate noticed the hesitation and immediately said, "I'm not asking because I want to know their private business. I'm asking because I need to understand them." Their voice was different now. Softer. Almost trembling. There was no curiosity for entertainment in it. There was love. There was concern. There was regret. And underneath all three was something even stronger, the realization that they might have been standing beside a remarkable person without fully understanding what made that person remarkable. Then another memory from your childhood was described. It was not dramatic in the way your soulmate expected. In fact, that was exactly what made it so powerful. It was a small moment. A quiet moment. The kind of moment other people might have forgotten completely. But you had not forgotten it. Somewhere deep inside you, that moment had traveled forward through the years. It had influenced the promises you make, the way you watch people's expressions, the way you notice when someone is pretending to be okay, and the way you sometimes give more than anyone asked you to give. Your soulmate listened carefully, and slowly their expression changed. They learned that there had been a time when younger you desperately needed comfort, yet instead of receiving it, you found yourself comforting someone else. Imagine what that revelation did to them. They pictured you carrying feelings too large for your age while still worrying about another person. They imagined you swallowing questions because you sensed that asking them might make things harder. They imagined you becoming quiet because somewhere inside you, you had already begun learning the dangerous lesson that your emotions should wait until everyone else was okay. And your soulmate suddenly remembered something about the person you are today. You still do this. Even now, there are moments when you are hurting and somehow end up asking another person, "Are you okay?" There are moments when your own heart needs attention, yet you notice everyone else first. There are moments when someone disappoints you, and before you even allow yourself to feel angry, you begin wondering what they might be going through. There are moments when you forgive quickly because understanding others became one of your earliest emotional instincts. Your soulmate had witnessed this countless times without realizing where it came from. Now they understood, and the understanding hurt. They whispered, "So that's why." Those 4 words carried years inside them. So that is why you notice everything. So that is why you sometimes become quiet instead of demanding attention. So that is why you can sense when someone is pulling away before they admit it. So that is why broken promises affect you so deeply. So that is why you remember little things people tell you. So that is why you try so hard to make the people you love feel seen. Your soulmate leaned back and wiped their face, but the tears returned almost immediately because another realization followed. They understood that some of the things they had received from you so casually were actually precious. Your patience was precious. Your honesty was precious. Your willingness to keep believing in the connection was precious. Every time you returned to a difficult conversation instead of simply walking away, you were doing something courageous. Every time you trusted them with another piece of yourself, you were handing them something your history had taught you to guard. And suddenly they felt ashamed of every time they treated that trust carelessly. Not condemned. Not hopeless. But awakened. There is a difference, my child. True understanding does not exist to bury someone beneath guilt. It invites them to become better. And that is exactly what began happening inside your soulmate. Their regret started transforming into determination. They could not undo moments when they misunderstood you, but they could decide how they would treat your heart from this point forward. They could learn. They could become more consistent. They could stop assuming that love survives automatically without being nurtured. They could stop allowing pride to speak louder than tenderness. Your childhood truth became a lesson for their adulthood. And heaven has a mysterious way of allowing love to become a mirror. Sometimes the person standing before you reveals where you still need healing. Sometimes they reveal where you need courage. Sometimes they reveal where you need boundaries. And sometimes, without even trying, their story teaches you how to become a better human being. Your soulmate is experiencing that now. They thought discovering your past would help them understand you, but they never expected it would force them to understand themselves. They remembered one particular argument between you. This memory came back so clearly that they almost felt as if they were standing inside that moment again. You had tried to explain something. Maybe you told them their distance was confusing you. Maybe you asked why their energy had changed. Maybe you wanted clarity about something they considered insignificant. At the time, your soulmate thought you were making too much of it. Perhaps they became defensive. Perhaps they told you not to worry so much. Perhaps they pulled away because they did not know how to handle the emotional intensity. But now they replayed your face. They remembered your eyes. They remembered the moment you stopped explaining. And for the first time, they understood that your silence had not meant the issue disappeared. You had simply decided you could carry the feeling yourself. That realization broke them again. They put their hand over their mouth as another wave of emotion came. Why didn't I see it? They asked. But the answer was painful and simple. They could not see what they had never learned to look for. They knew the adult you, but they did not understand the younger you who still quietly influences certain corners of your heart. They heard your words but did not always hear the history underneath them. Now they do. And this is where the story takes a turn your soulmate never expected. Because the person telling them about your childhood said, "There's something you need to understand." They never wanted anyone to feel sorry for them. Your soulmate immediately looked up. That sentence mattered. You did not carry your past around demanding that everyone compensate you for it. You did not want your wounds to become your identity. You did not want to be reduced to what happened. You wanted to be known for who you became. And that is why so much remained unspoken. Not because your story did not matter, but because you refused to let difficult chapters become the title of your entire life. Your soulmate began crying differently then. There was pride in those tears. They realized you had protected your dignity while healing. You had continued dreaming. Continued loving. Continued trying. You had created parts of yourself that had nothing to do with pain. Your humor. Your dreams. Your strange little habits. Your passions. Your hopes for the future. Your ability to laugh at unexpected moments. Your desire to build something meaningful. Those things were yours. They were not products of what hurt you. They were evidence that what hurt you did not get to own you. Your soulmate suddenly smiled through their tears. For the first time since the conversation began, something warm entered their expression. They said, "That sounds exactly like them." And the person across from them smiled too. Because there are qualities in you that cannot be explained through hardship. There is something naturally luminous about your spirit. Something that keeps searching for meaning. Something that keeps wanting to believe there is more ahead. Your soulmate has always noticed it, even when they could not name it. It is one reason they have struggled to completely detach from you emotionally. There is something about you that stays with people. Not because you are perfect, but because you are sincere in a world where sincerity can feel rare. Your soulmate knows this now more than ever. But another question was forming. They asked, did they ever talk about love when they were younger? The person answering paused again. Your soulmate noticed. There it was, that silence again. Another unopened door. Eventually, they were told that younger you had formed a private idea of what love should feel like. Not necessarily romantic love. Love itself. You wanted it to feel safe. You wanted people to mean what they said. You wanted home to be something emotional, not merely a place. You wanted someone to notice when you became quiet. You wanted apologies to lead to change instead of becoming repeated words. You wanted loyalty without having to beg for it. And without realizing it, you carried that definition forward. That is why surface-level connection has never completely satisfied you. Your heart wants recognition. Not attention alone. Recognition. There is a difference. Attention says, "I see you standing there." Recognition says, "I understand something about who you are." Your soulmate finally understands that distinction. They realized that perhaps there were moments when they gave you attention without giving you recognition. They spoke to you, spent time with you, thought about you, maybe even told you they cared, but did they truly make you feel understood? Did they notice what your silence meant? Did they recognize when you were asking for reassurance without directly asking? Did they understand that sometimes you needed consistency more than excitement? The questions would not stop. And then something extraordinary happened inside them. They stopped asking, "Why are they like this?" and started asking, "How can I love them better?" That shift is everything. It is one thing for someone to discover your wounds and analyze them. It is another for someone to discover your story and become gentler because of it. Your soulmate does not want to become your therapist, your rescuer, or the person who constantly reminds you of yesterday. They want to become someone whose actions make tomorrow feel different. They are beginning to understand that you do not need saving. You already survived. What you deserve now is partnership. Someone who does not make you carry the entire emotional weight of a relationship. Someone who communicates instead of leaving you to decode silence. Someone who asks questions instead of making assumptions. Someone who does not use your vulnerability against you later. Someone who understands that the strongest person in the room still deserves somewhere safe to rest emotionally. And your soulmate is wondering whether they are ready to become that person. This is the decision that began forming at the end of the previous revelation. They want to change the way they show up. But there is more. They do not want to tell you immediately what they learned. That may surprise you. You might imagine that after such an emotional discovery, their first instinct would be to run toward you and say, "I know everything." But they stop themselves. Because somewhere inside, they realize that your childhood belongs to you. They do not want to approach you in a way that makes you feel exposed. They do not want you wondering who shared what, why it was shared, or whether people were discussing your private pain behind your back. So they are carrying this knowledge carefully. That restraint is part of their transformation. They want you to tell them in your own time. And if you never choose to explain every detail, they are beginning to understand that love does not entitle them to every locked room inside you. Some doors open through trust. Some open slowly. Some may remain private. Real love can respect that. Your soulmate sat alone later, thinking about this. The conversation had ended, but emotionally they had not left it. Your name kept returning to their mind. They imagined talking to you, but every imaginary conversation ended with them becoming emotional again. They wanted to say so much, yet none of the sentences felt sufficient. "I'm sorry" felt too small. "I understand" felt dishonest because they knew they could never completely understand what it was like to live your exact experience. "I love you" felt true, but even those words seemed incomplete. So they sat there. Quiet. And then they asked themselves a question that changed everything. If I love them, what am I willing to do differently? Not say. Do. That word mattered. Because love expressed only through emotion can be beautiful, but love expressed through behavior becomes something another person can actually experience. Your soulmate began thinking about consistency, communication, patience, accountability, presence. They began thinking about all the small things that create emotional safety. Answering honestly instead of avoiding difficult conversations. Saying when they need space rather than disappearing. Keeping promises. Admitting when they are wrong. Listening without immediately defending themselves. Not using silence as punishment. Not making you compete for basic reassurance. And for the first time, they understood that these small actions might mean more to you than any dramatic declaration. This realization created another memory. They remembered a time you were unusually happy because they did something simple. Maybe they remembered something you had told them. Maybe they checked on you unexpectedly. Maybe they kept a promise you assumed they would forget. Maybe they noticed a detail nobody else noticed. At the time, your soulmate wondered why such a small gesture meant so much. Now they know. To someone who learned early that certainty could disappear, consistency feels like love spoken in a language deeper than words. Your soulmate whispered, "I wish I had known." But heaven would say this: do not spend forever wishing you had known yesterday what you were only prepared to understand today. Growth begins now. And something is growing inside them. Your soulmate's tears have not disappeared, but the emotion behind them is changing. The helpless sadness is becoming purpose. They no longer want to sit and imagine what younger you deserved. They want to think about what present you deserves. And present you deserves peace. You deserve relationships where you are not constantly wondering where you stand. You deserve honesty that does not have to be extracted. You deserve affection that does not become a reward for perfect behavior. You deserve the freedom to have difficult days without fearing that love will disappear because you were not easy to be around. You deserve to be known as a complete person, not only as the strong one, not only as the healer, not only as the understanding one. Your soulmate is seeing this. But heaven is also showing something to you through this story. Do not believe that being loved requires you to remain endlessly strong. The younger version of you may have survived by becoming self-sufficient. The person you are today is allowed to learn something different. You are allowed to receive. You are allowed to say, "I need support." You are allowed to admit that something hurt. You are allowed to stop explaining away everyone else's behavior while ignoring what their behavior does to you. Compassion for others should not require abandonment of yourself. Your soulmate is learning how to love you differently, but you are also being invited to understand yourself differently. That is why this revelation reaches both hearts. And there is something beautiful about what happened next. Later that night, your soulmate found themselves looking at something connected to you. Perhaps a photograph. Perhaps an old message. Perhaps your name on their phone. Perhaps something you had given them. Nothing dramatic happened. The room was quiet. The world continued outside as normal. But inside them, everything felt different. They looked at your face and imagined the years they never witnessed. They imagined the child becoming the person in that image. They imagined all the versions of you that existed before they arrived. And suddenly they spoke aloud, even though nobody was listening. "I'm proud of you." The word surprised even them. They had never said them to you that way. But they meant them. They were proud that you survived without losing your humanity. Proud that you continued believing in meaningful connection. Proud that you kept your ability to care. Proud that you built a life beyond old memories. Proud that you became yourself instead of becoming only what circumstances tried to shape you into. And then another sentence followed. "I wish you could see yourself the way I see you right now." Their eyes filled again. Because your soulmate realized that you may still judge yourself for certain things they now understand with compassion. Maybe you dislike how much you think. Maybe you become frustrated with yourself for needing reassurance. Maybe you wish you could trust faster. Maybe you wonder why certain situations affect you so strongly. Your soulmate no longer sees those things as evidence that something is wrong with you. They see context. They see a journey. And they also see how much healing has already happened. You are not standing where younger you stood. You have learned. You have changed. You have broken patterns. You have become aware of things previous versions of you could not even name. And your soulmate is beginning to admire not only the child who survived, but the adult who kept choosing growth. Then something unexpected happened. A message came. Not from you. From the person who had revealed part of your childhood story. Your soulmate stared at the notification before opening it. There were only a few words. I forgot to tell you something important. Immediately, their heart tightened. They replied. What? Several minutes passed. No answer. Your soulmate began pacing because after everything they had already learned, they could not imagine what else remained. Then the response arrived. It mentioned an object. Something from your childhood. Something that apparently still existed. Your soulmate froze. They had no idea what the object was or why it mattered, but the next message made their hands tremble. It explained something they never told anyone. Now their mind began racing. What could an old object possibly explain? Why had it been kept? Who had kept it? And why had you never spoken about it? Your soulmate asked these questions immediately, but the answers came slowly. They learned that this object was connected to one particular night from your childhood. A night when something inside younger you changed. A night after which people noticed you became quieter about certain feelings. A night that may explain why one particular fear has followed you into adulthood. Your soulmate sat down. All the tears, all the realizations, all the regrets suddenly felt as though they had been leading toward this. They asked, what happened that night? The reply did not come immediately. Instead, a photograph was sent. Your soulmate opened it. For several seconds, they simply stared. Their breathing stopped for a moment. Because inside that photograph was the object. Old. Small. Ordinary to anyone who did not know the story. But attached to it was something else. Something written years ago. Your soulmate zoomed in. There were words. Words written by a much younger version of you. They began reading. And by the time they reached the final sentence, their hand was covering their mouth again. Because those childhood words contained a promise. A promise younger you had made quietly to yourself. And your soulmate suddenly realized you had been living by that promise for years without ever telling them it existed. But the most shocking part was not the promise itself. It was the name written underneath it. A name your soulmate recognized immediately. And the moment they saw whose name it was, they understood that there was still one final piece of your childhood story nobody had told them yet.